Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Aga Wilson Show. So we're finally back, and my first guest for this year, and we're super excited, is Shelley Swapp. And Shelley is a herbalist, and we actually met in Switzerland on this amazing women's retreat. That was one of the most amazing things that I got to do last year, and meet so many amazing women that are doing amazing work out there. So welcome, Shelley. It's so great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Aga. It's so good to see you again.
So good to see you too, always. And yeah, I mean, we had a very interesting and incredibly deep and I would say heartfelt retreat together with many amazing women from all over the world. And then we also got to have some treatments and stuff that you presented to us, and which was also really amazing. And the way you just did everything and catered to all of us was just, you know, mind blowing. And I felt so like relaxed and taken care of. And I know you're sitting on like incredible knowledge that I feel needs to be out there in the world. More so because I do really believe that this is the future of medicine, is herbalism, and actually going back to what we once were, because there's so much knowledge in the ancient traditions that, you know, it's really mind-blowing how much is out there, and you know how much is actually extremely healing to so many people. So I would love to hear your story again, because I got really inspired by your story and why you decided to become a herbalist to start with.
Thank you. I agree. I think we live in an amazing day and age where we have access to so much more, just as the internet has opened up doors for us to study things in other cultures and other places, and things are getting interpreted and made more accessible. We have we really have an amazing opportunity to learn more about how we as a people, as the human race, has learned to take care of ourselves over eons of time, right?
Yeah,
So
I really believe that we are looking at a big transformation when it comes to the medical establishment, you know, and how we look at health. You know, there's so much things coming out right now, all over the world, old methods, new research, new science, and it's all super exciting. We live in very exciting times where I think, you know, there will be a big reform of the healthcare system globally, and I'm happy to see that you know, so many people out there are doing amazing work, and that, you know, we can be part of it.
agree. It is really exciting. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that I've seen in my journey as things have changed over the years, because it's been I definitely started from a place of would you say desperation? I mean, I really had exhausted every avenue I possibly could have as a young mom. I had four small children really quickly, and one after another, they were facing some pretty intense diagnoses. Um, and I just couldn't. I remember one week in particular, I got a phone call. I got several phone calls kind of in a row, and all of them for different children were saying, we really don't have any other options for you. Um, whether it was, pretty severe ADHD, behavior issues. I mean, I had one doctor who called and we had gone through every single ADHD med, because I had a kiddo who was struggling to just, sit still and function in school, um, and was reacting to everything that we had tried. And then they wanted to put him on antipsychotic meds. He was 10, because of the side effects of the ADHD meds. And my brain was like, wait, no, he wasn't having any of these problems before we started medicating him. He was just a really busy little boy who got his work done really fast, and then would get up and start, bothering other kids in the classroom. The teachers didn't like it. And so, um, and so they were trying to find ways to help him, settle down and pay attention. And if he didn't like doing something, he wouldn't do it. He'd want to go do something else, which is pretty typical for for little boys. It's pretty typical for kids, I think, and adults too. But so we were kind of dealing with that. And then there were some other really heavy diagnosis of my other kiddo who is still managing, we're still managing his care with a catastrophic neuromuscular disease. And at the time, there wasn't anything they could offer, just steroids. And his little system couldn't tolerate them. His heart rate went through the roof. He couldn't keep clothes on. He couldn't handle the sound of leaves blowing in the wind. I mean, like, there's no way to live like that. And I just got to a point where, and we were facing multiple food allergies, and kids who were failure to thrive. And I just really kind of was like, there's no way that these children were sent here to live like this. Like, and then they were sent to me. Like, I just like any universal being, any God, any power that knew me knew that I wasn't going to sit down and take it lightly and just say, well, that's just the way that their lives are going to go. How sad. It was just, no, I loved them way too much.
Which is probably why they chose you as their mother.
I hope
They
so.
knew, you know.
I hope so. I hope every day they believe that.
I am sure.
But but I started really kind of I really had exhausted everything. Every specialist I could think of, we had gone to, and kind of came to my wit's end. And I had some neighbors who came over to visit and just kind of check on me and see how I was doing. And I kind of poured my heart out to them and said, they were older than I was, their children were grown. And so I was just like, any resource, do you have anything? I will look, read, go talk to anybody if you've got an idea. And they didn't have a lot to offer me, but after they left, they spoke with another woman in the neighborhood who showed up on my doorstep and said, hey, I'm headed out of town. I'm going to Europe for a couple of weeks with my family. I just ordered this book. It's massive. I was hoping to take it with me on the plane, but it really is massive. It's very heavy. It's called Nourishing Traditions. And she said, I thought of you and thought, would you like to read this while I'm gone? And you can give it back to me. And if you can imagine, young mom, 4 little kids, all of our resources had gone to their healthcare. I didn't even have the money to buy that book myself. Like, that would have been a stretch to pay for that book at the time. And so it was such a gift that she kind of landed she put in my hands, and I began to read. And I remember reading, and if anybody is familiar with that book, it's an amazing book. Like, it is so full of information that even the margins of that book have writing in them. Like,
Wow.
they left no page. There are no spots in that book that doesn't have something to read, and it's giant. I've got it right here on my shelf. And I remember not sleeping for 2 weeks while she was gone, so that I could finish that book. And it was just this amazing collection of work that talked about traditional diets, traditional food, resources, those types of things. And I thought, okay, I have nothing to lose. We'll try it. In order to be able to have the money to take care of my kids, I had started couponing, if you're familiar with that. And so I was the queen of coupons. I would go to the grocery store and literally I would bring down their systems because I had too many coupons. I shut down a couple of grocery stores, just their entire system was overwhelmed with the 300 coupons I brought in, because it was more than they could handle, I guess, so their system was allowed. And I remember bringing down all the cash registers at a local grocery store, 2 days before Thanksgiving, because I had so many coupons. I could go to the grocery store and come away with 2 shopping carts full of food and pay $30 for it. And I was that was how I wasn't able to work at the time because I was caring for these kids. And that was how I contributed to the family as far as income. But if anybody's ever done that before, they don't have coupons for fresh fruits and vegetables. They don't have coupons for the most part for meat and, dairy and real foods.
That says a lot, right?
It's
Says
all
it is.
processed food.
Yeah, it says a lot,
Yeah. And so I was feeding these kids fruit snacks and toaster strudels and Pop-Tarts and every single thing you could think of that any, like we were the cool, my kids had the coolest lunches. They had Lunchables, they had, they had all these fun things. And if we ever had to go to school and there was a party, I could pull out all sorts of fun, fabulous treats for my food storage that I literally paid pennies for. Um, my food storage, I had a food storage closet and it was full. It was full of all these processed foods. And so reading that book just, it broke my brain. It broke my heart because I realized that part of a big part of the problem was that I was feeding my kids foods that weren't nourishing. Like I was filling them full of everything that they shouldn't be getting. Food coloring and
Poison.
preservatives and all the things. And so we made a pretty radical change. Like I literally had to throw out everything we had. And I went back to the way I pretty much had been raised. Like I'd been raised, gardening and freezing food and putting it up and drying things and on whole foods. And so I was acquainted with how to cook. I'd done it my whole life. And I started to cook from scratch and bring in these things like bone broths and um, we in my garden, I love to garden luckily, and I started growing all sorts of things. And we adopted hens and had our own little flock and had our own eggs every morning. And my kids started to heal. Wasn't 100%, but it was enough of a change that I was like, oh my goodness. And so then I need to learn more. I've got to learn more. What else is out there? And I did work with a doctor who had some specialty and at the time was called Defeat Autism Now. So I have kids that are on the autism spectrum. And he ran a bunch of tests and he was like, and he really, this was happening at the same time I was reading this book. And he was like, you've got to get these food colorings, you've got to get these toxins, you've got to get all these things out of your kid's diet. So he just kind of confirmed what I was seeing. And he introduced me to a couple of herbs, things like pycnogenol, um, nettle, really basic things that I hadn't been familiar with. And we started to incorporate them into my kids' treatment protocols. And my oldest at the time was in fourth grade, so he was 10 or 11. And his teacher came to me at the end of the year and she said, I have parents begging me to ask you what medication he's on.
Exactly.
Whatever you're doing, they want it.
And that's
He,
so interesting because it's it's so easy to just start there. I mean, for me in my own healing process also, food was the medicine, and that for me always comes first, and then you add supplements and you add other things. But there's so many people out there who think they can eat bad and then they can add the supplements and heal, which is like completely, this is where you always start. It's the food and the water that needs to be clean in order to heal. And it's more powerful than all the supplements and medicines because your body is breaking them down in a very different way compared from, just taking supplements. These are still like, processed things that you put inside you. And yes, they're very effective on many levels, when you know what to take for what, but food is first.
right, absolutely. I mean, like our mitochondria need the basic vitamins and nutrients and amino acids. Like our DNA needs them. Like we need all these things from food and sunlight and clean water just for our body to continue to replicate the cells on a daily basis, right? In order to continue to heal. And if they don't have it, then things just really get scary fast. Um, and so when I said to her, oh, he's not on any medication, he's on a couple of herbs, but what we've done is change his diet. Like I literally have pulled out all the food coloring. He's gluten-free, he's dairy-free. I think at the time he also was, I mean, he had some other pretty severe allergies like nuts and things like that everybody was aware of. But I was like, we've literally just changed his diet. He's on a few B vitamins and he's on a couple of herbs. And she was floored. She was like, I have seen the biggest transformation in this young man over the last 9 months. I've never seen a kid transform like this. And you're telling me that all you did is change his diet. I said, yeah. He won an award that year at the school for most improved over the course of the school year, which was so sweet to see and so good for him, because he'd just taken such a hit mentally from like all the teachers and everybody. Like,
Imagine.
why won't you settle down? Why can't you do these things? Why can't you just turn your homework in? So he was starting to get well, and then my other son, who has this catastrophic muscle wasting disease, is, we're facing really hard choices with him, and he's also on the autism spectrum, and so I was like, I'm all in. We're changing everybody's diet. It's not like, we did it for everybody, and we started to see his system begin to stabilize, which the doctors were floored by. Um, and his little body would began to absorb nutrients, and he was able to go to school all day instead of only for a couple of hours and then having to come home and rest. And we absolutely partnered with with his doctors for sure along this pathway. To say, okay, can you run blood tests for me? Can you help me with these types of things? And they were like, sure. I mean, we have nothing to lose. We'd love to see this kid get well. But those were kind of my stepping stones. And as I started to realize, okay, the food has taken us so far, but there are other pieces that we need. We had heart issues that were coming up with kids. We had, all these, these other things we were like 70 to 80% there. And I kept looking for more resources, which led me to a study of herbalism. And I started like most people did. I picked up books and started reading about, I started with food, and I was reading through like food as medicine types of things. And then I picked up books and started reading about herbs. Maybe I can add a little bit here and add a little bit there. And we started to see even more benefits. And they weren't like overnight. They were certainly slow and steady, and where we would go in and I apologize, I don't know why that's going on. And they were going in and heart function tests were getting a little bit better, which was unusual. And cognitive tests were getting better. And so I just kept going, and I thought, okay, if my kids are seeing this much of a benefit with just the few little things that I know and that I'm learning, how much more of a benefit could they have if I really understood what herbalism, what these herbs did? And it was a long process of continually adding more resources and more resources. And I ended up working for a program called the YDPP, the Diabetes Prevention Program. It's a big thing here in the States. You'll see it referenced all the time in the literature. And they were teaching people to lower their fat intake in an effort to reduce their incidence of diabetes, because the diabetes epidemic it still is monstrous across the world. But we were seeing some really good benefits. And I became a director of a program in Florida and started running with that and teaching people around this, and teaching, doctors, and as far as helping them have resources and how to refer and all those things and the data behind it. And I worked with that program for a couple of years, and I loved it, but I wasn't super aligned with it, because my experience was not that you cut fat, it was that you ate whole foods. And that program allowed, like, I remember a woman, there was one class I had, one group that I had that I coached, and there was a woman who was brilliant. She was an attorney. She had spent her whole life trying to lose weight, and got enrolled in this program through insurance. There was a truck driver in the same group with her, and he had been eating like one meal a day, stopped and would get fast food or whatever, and then he would get in his truck and drive. And when we started to apply the principles of this program, he started to lose weight really rapidly, because he was eating 3 meals a day. He was lowering his fat, which meant he was cutting out things like French fries and that sort of thing, so he could he could meet his fat grams. And he was spending his day snacking on things like Swedish fish and candy, but he was losing weight because he he was eating more regularly, and he'd cut out a massive inflammatory piece for him.
Which makes sense, but is it healthy?
Right. And the woman sitting next to him in the group each week was not losing weight. And she was eating salads, and she was eating really healthy foods. And I remember the last time I saw her, she had taken clients out to dinner to her favorite restaurant. And she went in and she ordered her favorite salad, and it had like feta cheese and cranberries and I think maybe it was feta cheese and blueberries or something, and chicken or whatever, and her favorite dressing. And she'd like been so excited to go because it was her favorite dish that she ordered. And after the meal, and dining, and entertaining her clients and everything. She went home, she did her tracking and realized that she had utilized all the fat grams for the entire week in that one meal. And she was devastated. And she was like, how in the world I'm eating this thing that's supposed to be healthy. And now you're telling me I can't have any more fat for the rest of this week. I haven't lost a pound. And this guy sitting next to me can snack on sweet Swedish fish all day long. And he can lose weight. Something's wrong here. And she was gone. I didn't blame her one bit. I was like, you're right. You're absolutely right. That's not the way I feed my family. It's not the way I feed myself. And that really pushed me from, okay, I've got to go back and get more education. I want to be able to offer more to people. And so I went back to herb school. We moved from Florida to California. I got enrolled in a really great program. I ended up getting to work in person with the director and his wife, which hadn't happened. They had never offered in-person classes. They'd all been in virtual for years. And then just, you would come like once a year. But he decided to see if he could get people from basic herbalism to clinical herbalism faster if he met with him. And he looked at me the first time he met me and he was like, anybody can see me. I'm just this basic blonde woman, right? Like, and he looked at me, I'm not your typical like earthy hippie that showed up at the class. There was like a handful of us. And he was like, well, I don't know if you're going to be able to do this. He said, maybe if you study like hell, forgive my language, maybe you can make it through this. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. I really, really want to learn this stuff. And I studied and studied and studied and read everything I could. And it took me a solid year before things really started to click and I could see the body differently. And then another year of like really deeply immersing myself in Chinese medicine and herbalism and body systems and all those things. And then I got a chance to be a part of a clinic. He opened up we opened up a clinic at the local homeless shelter in Santa Cruz. Because he said, before I die, and he hasn't died, gratefully, he said, but before I die, I want to get back to my community. It's been such an amazing community and I want to get back. And people who don't have access to this care desperately need it. And so we went in and started seeing people in the at the homeless shelter once a month. And then it became twice a month. And then we added veterans. And it was like drinking from a fire hose because all these patterns that I'd read about in these books were like times 10 in these people who were unhoused, who lived in extreme conditions. And we were able to come in and bring just simple herbal preparations and Ayurvedic food and just once a month with a couple. And then we began adding things like acupuncture and Shirodhara practices, meditation practices for them once or twice a month is all. And we saw miraculous things happen. It really was the kindest way to learn. Like, I don't know that I could have learned everything I learned by just reading books and going to school and clinics, but to apply it in such extreme situations and have to do it in such a fast amount of time because we only got to see them for a short period of time and we had very limited resources. I mean, like, you really, it was such a gift for me, and it was something I loved being able to give to others.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also I feel with herbalism and like everything that you're talking about and the body healing and the preparation for it and the length of the time, like very often we go to the doctor and we get like this magic pill that fixes everything and you're done, but then suddenly down the road it's like, oh, now I'm getting side effects from this pill, so I'm taking another one and another one, and at the end of the day people end up with like tens
Yes.
of pills,
Yes.
because one is kind of protecting you from the other one. So, but
and that was the same thing that we were seeing with this unhoused population, because they had access to Western medicine. They would literally come in with these bags of prescriptions that they hadn't had consistent care. They were seeing a different doctor every time they went to the free clinic. And so being able to just like, they were just really suffering.
Yeah.
And they hadn't been nourished in so long.
And that is a process, right? Because it takes maybe a little bit longer, but once you're healed, and you can feel it in your body is feeling better and your life is becoming better. And also, I mean, I've noticed even with kids, right? Because you said like how you healed your kids with food. When I had my son, I was very aware already from the beginning. So he ate very clean, very, very clean from the beginning. And I just remember my first experience with him eating French fries. Like he literally, and this kid had never had a meltdown ever before. You give him
Really?
French fries, and within 10 minutes, first he starts running around like he had, I mean, there was some like energy kick from out of this world, but not like in a good way. He was just very confused and started, running around. And then in front of me, like right there, I think he's 2.5 or 3, he just gets like the worst meltdown ever. He just like sits down there in front of me and starts screaming and crying. And I didn't recognize him because I'd never seen anything like it. So talk about like mood swings,
Yeah.
and what the food does to your body, and that we, many people are not aware of because we're just used to eating it. I mean, it can lead to depression. There's just so many things, that can come out of eating unhealthy food, and so many benefits of being a clean eater, and eating whole foods, like you say.
That's amazing that I mean, like if I could go back, I wish I could have started from day one with clean foods with my kids. I didn't know better. And I saw the same switch in mine when we did move to these clean foods. Like the meltdowns stopped, the mood swings stopped, they slept, they could concentrate. But I didn't know that they were even capable of that because they hadn't ever been like they hadn't their bodies had never had a chance to, because I hadn't understood how important it was to give them the types of foods that you understand are important to for your
Yeah,
child
but then
now.
I find it hard anyways because they go to someone else's house, or
Yes.
sometimes the other kids get all of the crappy stuff and then they wanted to. I mean, of course, we can't protect them from everything, and it's very hard to control those kind of situations. But then they tried ice cream, right? So now he loves ice cream and he wants the shitty ice cream, and sometimes I give in. So it's just as hard to kind of like
Well, yeah, and you have
navigate in that world too, of
right,
the stuff, because you look at them and you just don't want to deprive them either, so they become crazy, like start
right,
just wanting that food. So it's like
right.
it's hard both ways, and maybe I was aware from the beginning, but then as he got introduced to the other crappy stuff, it's hard to kind of maintain. But then I do, and I hope that his system will know what to choose in the
Yeah.
future,
Well, and
because you grow a
I
seed,
think that,
for that.
yeah, and I think that's a huge thing, especially as our kids become teenagers and young adults. They have to have the opportunity to make their own choices. Like that's the whole point, right? They have to grow up to be adults who have they have had the experiences that they need to have in order to make good choices. And part of those choices, that part of that process is making bad choices, so that they know why it's been so important in your home to have things a certain way or to do things a certain way. And I absolutely had to let go of the reins when my kids were teenagers. Like at home, everything was as clean as possible. If we made a treat, it was a great treat. It didn't have all the things in it that would be reactive. But once they walked out the door, I couldn't. It wasn't my job to control them. It was hopefully they would feel, and they did. They would feel the impacts of eating crappy food, and there were times that things got really rough for them. And then I remember my oldest being like, I think he was a junior in high school, and he said, "Mom, I got to get well. I can't do this anymore. Remind me again how I'm supposed to eat. Will you help me?" Um,
That's so
and
sweet.
and as a mom, it's like, yes, anything, of course. And he, as a young adult, he's in his 20s now. We're kind of going down that path again, because you're allowed as a human to just try all the things.
Of
And I'm
course.
so grateful that my kids have been willing to come back and say, okay, mom, I don't feel good anymore.
Yeah,
Can you help me get my system back in line? And I think they wouldn't have done that had I been militant. I'm
exactly.
sure I was. I'm sure I was militant when they were younger. I know I was. But when they got old enough that it was like, this isn't worth our relationship.
Yeah, and it's beautiful of you to do that because, like, I'm the same way, I will teach him everything that I can. but at one point he will be 18 and he will, start making
He'll be
his own decision,
13.
and I will have to let go, hoping,
Yeah.
that he will take with him some of the stuff that I taught him. But I see even now, I mean, he's only 7, but when he eats bad stuff, he feels it in his body, and he's able to like kind of, differentiate between when he eats healthy and not, and how he feels inside. So it's already starting, like they will feel it. And so do we, right? Once we go,
Right.
like, when you eat something bad, you feel it immediately in your body. So we start like being aware in a different way. And I think that's all we can give them, because,
Yeah.
after that, there's nothing we can do. They have to kind of come to those conclusions themselves.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And I think, we all, yeah, we're all on our own journeys, but it's such a gift if at least they have a good foundation, that they can pull back to when they get to that place of going, okay, I know I haven't always felt like this. I have felt well. What was I doing differently then?
Yeah.
And I think that's been the big driver for my kids, and it's been my driver too. There's times where I'm like, okay, I've gotten off path, like as far as I'm running too hard. I'm skipping meals because I'm trying to get all these things done, or I'm trying, I'm pushing too fast, too hard, and my sleep is going downhill or whatever. I'm like, I get sick, and I have to circle back and go, oh yeah, I need to go back to these really beautiful practices of nourishing, replenishing, and restoring the body. So that my body can do what it really wants to do, which is thrive. It wants to live, it wants to be well. But if I don't give it the tools to be well, and then I'm already sunk.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm also thinking, because we did have a lot of talks about, specifically something that I know one of your specialties is, which is women's health. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that, because to me it's very important. And I also feel like lately, well, there's that age, right? Like once you pass a certain age, the women's health starts becoming much more in your face,
Yeah.
because it's all like the hormones, and the changes and the menopause and all sorts of things. But one thing that I wanted to bring up was, that we just came out of the whole COVID crisis recently, and I feel, well, I was working a lot with people, and especially injured during that time. But one thing that I saw very clearly was that a lot of women had issues with their menstruation, whether they had COVID or they had taken the COVID shot. But many women experienced a lot of menstrual issues, everything from, big blood clots to,
Yeah.
heavy bleeding. We even saw women who had gone into menopause, 5-7 years ago, and they got their periods back. And
It's
we still
wild.
don't know. Yeah, we still don't know the consequences, because, how has that impacted or will impact future fertility? I mean, there's just all sorts of question marks out there. But, and for me, when that happened, of course, immediately I go into first listening to my body, but also, how do I get myself back on track, hormonally, obviously, because there is some sort of disturbance with the hormones and other things, I assume. But and I don't know if you experienced that, but I would love to hear, like, some advice for that kind of stuff, where to even begin. I know you have to see people individually to really, like, do some sort of a diagnosis, but just overall, how can we, manage our reproductive health better as women, especially, after the age of 40, when things start like really come up to surface, I feel.
Yeah, I wish it started. I mean, like I'm seeing so many clients in their in their mid-20s and 30s
Oh,
now,
really?
who everything just went sideways for them after they got COVID, with their fertility and their menstrual health. And of course I'm seeing women in their 30s and their 40s who are in the same boat. Like that long COVID it's real. It's very real. It's very
Yeah.
impactful. And it has messed it's almost like it took things that were, and this is just the universe according to Shelley, but it's almost like it took things that were kind of teetering on the edge, like people were kind of holding it together. And then COVID came in, and it's this novel thing that our bodies have never seen before, and it just knocked everything off the shelf. we're spending a lot of time trying to get things back together again. And while yes, we want to, we need to take things on a case by case basis, there are absolutely some very important tools that anybody can reach for to help give them the basics that they need to be well. And I spend a lot of time teaching women about just simple things like macronutrients, and what they do, how important it is to have adequate amounts of protein, because protein is how we get amino acids, and amino acids are the building blocks of our tissues, of our cells, of our hormones. And if we're not getting adequate protein, if we're not getting complete sources of protein, whether they're plant-based or animal-based, and we're not getting good quality sources, then we're already underwater. I mean, we're already starting from 10 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet below. So that has to be part of the puzzle, is making sure that you're getting adequate nutrients. And carbohydrates are the same. Like we need, like my early story of like junky stuff is just going to fill your body with junky stuff. And so like we need things from the earth. We need all the colors of the rainbow. Like when we look at the chakras and the things that we've learned from Ayurvedic tradition and yoga therapy and yoga medicine, it's a whole spectrum of healing. And Chinese medicine is the same way. And it is so vital that we look at all the different colors of the rainbow and make sure that we're getting nutrients from all of them, the flavonoids. When we look at them from a Western medicine perspective or from a Western nutrition perspective, we try to break them down into all these different, important chemicals, that phytonutrients and nutrients, but we don't even know that the half of what these different plants provide our bodies. We just know that our bodies need them and that they do so much better when we have ample sources of them. And then the same thing with fats. There are a number of different fat soluble vitamins. We just can't get them anywhere else. We have to have really healthy fats like olive oil and nuts and avocado and those types of things. And so that's a really good place to start, and to understand how much your body needs on a daily basis. Most women that I meet, not all of them, there definitely are people on the other end of the spectrum, but most women I meet are undernourished, wildly undernourished. They've been taught their whole lives to eat less and move more.
Yeah.
And so we come in and we get hit with this novel virus, and we're already undernourished. And so the very first job you can do is learn how to eat again, how to take care of yourself, how to really make sure you're prioritizing a beautiful practice of eating. It sounds
And
so
especially
simple.
during, such an important time as our menstruation, because I think, it's very true that we learned very early on in the Western world that menstruation is something, painful. It's a pain in the ass. You don't want it. Like, it's
Right.
just, a lot of women
Dreadful.
actually take pills, in order to get rid of it, or, not have it often enough. Well, that's a whole other conversation we can get
Right.
into another
Right.
time. But, I learned very early on that, menstrual cramps, for example, come because something is off in the body and you're not supposed to have them. So it's your body telling you that something is off, this
Yeah.
is, not normal. And it really, really, really helps, because I used to have cramps when I was younger, almost always. But
Same.
when I started really nourishing my body in the right ways, like no crap food, no fried food, like you're supposed to stay away from most of it, like, drink green smoothies, make sure to like get a lot of iron into your body, um, eat whole foods. And if you do, like literally, it stops.
Yeah.
It's so important.
It's amazing. I think my favorite, so I always use the concept of a report card. Like it really is a monthly report card. Have you taken care of yourself this month? And yes, there are going to be times that life is hard and you can't. Stressful things happen, people get sick, people get hurt, whatever. And yes, your period's going to come in and unfortunately remind you of how hard your month is. But generally speaking, my favorite thing in the world is when I have a client who says to me, my period started yesterday and I had no idea it was coming. I wasn't miserable. I wasn't moody. I wasn't, I was a little tired, and I thought, wonder why I'm so tired, which is normal. And I didn't have any cramps. I didn't, I didn't have my moments of rage. I didn't cry. I like it just came and everything's fine. And
Mhm.
that tells us that we're doing, it's sad that that is so shocking, Like that's so outside the norm for so many women, but it is really how we're designed. Like it really shouldn't be, like you said, it shouldn't be a miserable experience every month. And there are conditions that definitely make it a lot harder, endometriosis and
Absolutely, yes.
PCOS and those types of things that can make it really difficult. But even those, we're learning are metabolic diseases as well.
Yeah, that
And
can be
when we
healed,
can
right?
go, yes, when we can go in and really learn how to support your metabolic system and your detoxification pathways in really substantial ways, we see women get relief. We see women be able to have babies. We be, you know, and even if we're not talking fertility, we're talking about all the protective benefits of progesterone and estrogen on our cardiovascular system and on our brains and on our lungs and on our muscles and our bones. And so it really is about protecting our hormones because it helps to keep us well, regardless of our fertility status.
Speaking about hormones and imbalances and all of that, from my experience and also talking to other women that have had, you know, imbalances, when you test yourself, you know, in a regular clinic, usually, you know, they test for certain hormones, but then, you know, I found out that they're not testing for all of them, and there's some that are truly very important to know the levels of in order to determine what is happening in your body and being able to heal it. So what's like your take on that, and what's your experience?
You know, hormone testing it is a little bit about like shooting in the dark because so hormones are signaling messengers, right? They by design are in flux all the time. So you may get like it, and I always feel so bad because women will go in, myself included, will go in, their practitioner will draw blood and they'll say everything's in normal range, but they feel awful, right? And everything was probably in normal range for the 20 minutes that you were sitting at the table getting that blood work done, whatever normal is, right? But we haven't looked at things like, what is your insulin? Like insulin's a hormone, insulin's a huge hormone that impacts so many things. And glucose levels can be, insulin's job is to keep glucose levels stable. So insulin can be off the charts, and we're just checking glucose to see what's going on in the body. But insulin can be incredibly destructive when it's really high for sex hormones, for all sorts of inflammatory markers in the body. And the same with thyroid. Like a lot of times we go in and the doc will they've just been taught to check TSH. And what we need to be checking are things like free T. We need to be looking at T4 and T3. We need to be looking at antibodies. We need to be looking at cortisol. We need to be looking at hypothyroid. We need to be looking at all these other signaling hormones that can be off for 8 or 9 years before we see that TSH level move, because those hormones' job are to keep TSH in a pretty tight range, right? And so they can be bouncing all over the place and making someone feel horrible. But our TSH can be normal, right? And same with once you head into perimenopause. I saw a really great chart yesterday. Before you head into perimenopause, your hormone cycles are pretty regular, provided that you're healthy and you don't have any of these other major issues going on that we've talked about. You should see estrogen levels rise and you should see them fall. We should see luteinizing hormone come up. We should see progesterone levels come up, and then we should see estrogen levels rise again. Then we should see FSH come up. Once we get into perimenopause, no longer is it just this very steady little like up and down. It's like crazy town. Like estrogen can be like all over the place, and then progesterone just all of a sudden can go, take a tank, and then FSH levels start to rise and LHL. I mean, it really looks, the picture, the graph of if when they're able to track women, whether they're doing urinary testing or whatever, where they're able to say, okay, what's going on a daily basis over the course of a couple of months with a woman who's in late stage, especially late stage perimenopause, it looks like a full-on circus. It feels like a full-on circus. And so going in and just taking a blood test at any one random moment during that circus, you could catch all the levels in normal ranges and not have
Yeah, not.
any good resources, right? I mean,
But even there, like, when a woman goes through that, roller coaster of hormonal ups and downs, what are some ways, to kind of balance it out? Or can we still, like, heal a woman back to, you know, that more balanced way of the hormones?
Yes and no. Like they're by design, our ovaries are only allowed to live for so long, right? And so at some point, the ovaries are they're gonna peace out. Can we extend their capacity? For sure, for sure. Managing the stressors on the body. And I mean, we just live in a very stressful world. Stress is just part of our existence. And so doing things like, everything from supportive nutrition. We need protein in order to build those hormones, like we talked about, and fat in order to build those hormones that are going to help support. If you're not getting adequate amounts of food in the early stages, in the early part of your cycle, that first couple of weeks of your cycle, your body's not going to have the energy it needs to ovulate. And so then progesterone levels don't come. You don't get them if you don't ovulate. And so then we have estrogen levels that kind of can just keep growing, and endometrium layers keep growing, and it feels pretty awful. And then you get these really horrific periods that haven't been controlled by a progesterone coming in and kind of tampering things down and giving you the time to rest and chill and all those types of things. And so nutrition is a huge piece of that puzzle. And then we have herbs like Vitex, like it's either called Vitex or chasteberry is what most people are familiar with, that can come in and help support luteinizing hormone and support progesterone. And I see it do really wonderful things to help stabilize women's cycles over the course of the month. It's been used for thousands of years. In fact, I always tell my perimenopausal clients, when I'll start them on Vitex, because we can see that they're not ovulating regularly, that their periods are getting irregular, is I always tell them, I said, if you don't want to have a baby, you need to make sure you're using protection because Vitex is so good at helping the body to ovulate
And
that
it's
I
a
use
natural
it.
herb, which is amazing because I
Yes,
learned about it, you know, a few years ago, and it actually supports, stimulates the body's production of
yes,
progesterone, right?
luteinizing
So
hormone keeps
so
estrogen
you don't
levels.
need to, there's a lot of women who take the synthetic hormones, which, you know, are kind of seen as a problem, you know, especially from the more holistic perspective. You know, we're seeing a lot of more issues happening when they do that, but this is actually just a natural herb that you can take, which to me is, you know, I always choose the natural way first, you know, before like
Yeah.
pumping my body full of stuff that are not natural and you know and come from you know, a natural source.
Well, and if we take that, just that conversation we had just a few minutes ago about the fact that we don't actually understand all the different components of the plants that benefits our body. And so something we can say, yeah, we've got, maybe there's an active ingredient in Vitex that does this one thing that they've been able to isolate. It does so much more than that. Like it's really this beautiful companion herb for women's health. And we have several. We have several herbs that really, honestly, they just seem to be beautiful companions to help support women, because naturally we just have to go through this process of change in order for us to move through our fertile years and then into our more wisdom years. Um, and it's really quite amazing when you look back at things like Native American medicine and Chinese medicine, because they did know how to take care of women. They focused a lot of their energy and their time and the resources around supporting the things that we in the Western world often get told, oh, that's just normal. It's just, it's just menopause. It's just part of hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness, like all these things that we're told, oh, that's just, you just have to suffer through. If you look at the literature from thousands of years ago, we see men suffering from those types of things. We see it was not that, like, that's considered an imbalance that we needed to address, and meant that the body was telling you it's in need of support. It's like a car that's overheating, right? And we wouldn't ignore our car if it was
No, and
constantly overheating.
this is why I'm so incredibly grateful to you for doing this work, because you're kind of, you know, the bridge between the old and the ancient knowledge and the new, because we kind of lost our way here in between. And this knowledge is so incredibly valuable, you know, to us all, not to mention that, you know, it's there, it's been there for thousands of years. It's been used for a very long time. So I would say it's science in itself, but
It is
you need
evidence. It is the very definition of evidence-based medicine, right? Like,
exactly. And it was just all erased at some point.
yeah,
But you know, we really need people like you to bridge the gaps now and you know, enter into the new, which will build, you know, to me at least, you know, I want to build the new healthcare system that's going to focus much more on the individual health of every single human being. And you know, that's where you come in. And also, of course, like we need to do so much more research to gain so much more knowledge about these, you know, fantastic magical plants out there, you know, that are doing, you know, that can do so much more good without, you know, almost no side effects. If you compare to like modern medicine that, you know, has incredible amounts of side effects. But here
yeah,
we're talking about something that nature has given us and it's always been there, you know.
yeah.
I'm the
Yeah,
kind
and
of
I think the differentiation piece is so huge. Like if you have an emergency, if you break a bone, you have a heart attack, you get in an accident or something, there is no better place I want to be than emergency medicine and Western
exactly.
medicine. Like
Yeah.
we are so grateful. And I totally get why that became the standard. I get it. You know, like if you could save lives in ways that they hadn't been able to before.
Yes. Yes,
I can't
100%.
save those kind, you know, I can't do some of those things with herbs. But what we have, like you said, what we've gotten away from and what we need to bring back is truly caring for the body. Truly and like going in and nourishing, making sure detox pathways are open, making sure that your digestive system is healthy, that your skin is, you know, is clear and healthy, and like all the things that we know go into caring for the body, like truly true health care, right?
Yeah, and also because we are exposed to so many poisons and toxins constantly, you know, today in the water, in the food, in the air. I mean, it's just like coming at us. And so therefore, even more important to learn how to detox your body. I just had like a
Right.
huge thing with citric acid where I had to do research, you know, to kind of, you know, understand and also explain to people like why you have to avoid it in food. So, and I'm still on the research thing, but you know, and it's very confusing to me when there is a study that NIH did in 2018, you know, that is linked to so many like really horrendous diseases. And this stuff is in our food everywhere, you know, and people are not aware. And you know, I see it everywhere. And there's not even, you know, FDA never had any real studies made on it before it got out on the market. You know, we are seeing, you know, a lot of health effects, you know, from people just consuming it, and there's not even regulations of how much you can eat a day. I mean, if it's everywhere and you eat only processed foods, the chances are that you're getting large amounts into your body and into your kids, and it's. But this is just one of like 1,000 things out there, chemicals that are
Exactly.
everywhere in our food. So, you know, it's a very important thing to start really looking into these things and taking care of your bodies and your family's bodies, because we're being exposed to so much, and it's probably more important now than ever to kind of
Yeah.
you know, learn how to detox your body and keep yourself and your family healthy.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely agree. And I think it can be so, I just want to give space for those that maybe are hearing this for the first time. And it's so overwhelming. It is so overwhelming when you have to make that shift, when you're so used to just processed foods and fast things and you think, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to do it? Just baby steps, take it one day at a time, you know, make one change at a time. It does get better. You will feel the impacts, you will feel the benefits as you make these strides. But it's I don't ever want to come across as holier than thou, or that there's, you know, some that if you're not making these changes, or if you're not living this way, that you're not a good person. I didn't live that way. I didn't know. I didn't know until I had to, that it was impacting my family so significantly. And I feel so deeply for those who are wandering around in this life suffering, and they don't realize that there are some really simple things, and I call them simple. They're not easy, but they're simple,
Hmm.
that they can do to help their bodies become well.
Yes.
So
Thank you. I love that about you, Shelley, that you're always so humble, and the way you present things is always so extremely thoughtful and like heartfelt. And I really love that about you. So, because, like,
I've
yeah,
certainly,
it's important.
certainly been there.
No, it's very important, and I really appreciate that you're doing that. And I just feel like, yes, of course, we all have our own journeys, and I wasn't there either. When I was in my 20s, I probably lived on like McDonald's and pizza.
Right,
You know,
right.
like that's, we've all been there, and it's just a matter of, starting to be more aware and start making small changes. It doesn't I didn't make everything at once. It was a long process, and it still is. I mean, up until
Yeah,
today, we learn new things every day, and we educate ourselves every day, and we read new things. And the good thing is that there are people like you and me out there doing the work, sharing the information, and looking into things, and keeping this work up. So that's the way to go. But of course, you're right. Like, we all need to um take it slow and not be hard on ourselves, because it's very important to give
right.
yourself
Because then
that
we
self.
add to the stress hormones, right?
Exactly that.
Which
Exactly that.
turns
No,
everything off.
exactly that.
But yeah, I wish I
No
could
stress
just reach
hormones.
through and put my arms around you, Aga.
Oh, me too. I mean, you are amazing. And I would love for you to share like where people can actually connect with you, or if they want a consultation, because I think that you do absolutely amazing work, and helping so many people. And I really truly am grateful for that. And yeah,
I
please share
appreciate
so
that.
people can learn more about the wonderful work you're doing.
I appreciate that. I am probably easiest to contact on Instagram. My and it's just my name, Shelley Swapp, Shelley Swap, and we can put it in the show notes. And then I can drop you a link to my calendar as well if anybody's interested in chatting. I do offer a 15-minute consultation. And I have to be honest, I've gotten really busy in my practice, and I don't spend as much time on social media as I used to. Like, um, I'm working on finding support. My daughter's actually helping me build out my social media support so that I can be a presence there and help to continue to educate people. But yeah, it can be a little tricky to find on social media these days. Not because I don't want to be, it's just like
I
life in general.
understand. We all go through these things,
Yes, it's a good
until
thing,
we
right?
find solutions. Yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that you're busy helping people out there. So, and that's only on social media they can reach you?
I mean, I've got email.
Website?
I'm
Okay,
happy to send you email and a link to my calendar if they want to schedule
okay,
an appointment and that sort of
absolutely.
thing. So there's lots of ways to reach out to me, but those are, and I do have a podcast as well. I have not been actively adding podcast episodes in the new year. I think I've only done one. Um, you and I need to re-record ours because I want to do a better job.
We will, we
We
will.
talked about a lot of too many really important things, and we left too many things unturned, unfinished. But I do have a podcast as well that's got all sorts of great resources. It's called the Wellness Restoration Project, and that you can find on any of the available podcast networks as well. And I'm happy to send you the link to that as well if you'd like to
Yeah, I
include
can
it.
post it together with this episode so people can have access.